10 things to know about Warner Brothers Studio Tour.
One of the things that we like to do when we go to California, Los Angeles area visiting Disneyland is take these studio tours. They're very interesting, and sometimes you got to have a little bit low expectations, but they're a lot funner than they seem from the outside.
I love it. I love all things movies. You guys, if you're following us on Unlocking the Magic podcast, you know how much I miss the great movie ride in Hollywood studios in Walt Disney World. So when we head over to California, the first thing I want to do is see all things movies. And I was really excited about doing this Warner Brothers Studio Tour because it's accessible. In order to visit the Walt Disney Studios, you actually have to do an Adventures by Disney, which we haven't done.
No, not yet.
So this is an immersive experience that takes you through this legendary studio lot. And today we're going to talk about what we did, what there is to know at this really cool place.
And it's not that expensive, too. You can get a ticket for about $60 or $70 per person. It's not necessarily a VIP tour where you go alone, but it's not a huge group of people. It's about 8 to 10 people in your group, and they take you on a golf cart ride through the studio and kind of show you and share a little behind the scenes as to how they make TV shows and movies. And if you're into movies and nostalgia, and not even nostalgia, if you're into movies, it's so cool to see where they created these scenes and how they transform from scene to scene with the same set.
Not only movies, but the Warner Brothers actually they were pioneers in starting the TV show. So if you're a really big fan of TV shows, for instance, Friends, you're going to see a lot of behind the scenes that you might not ever get to see elsewhere, and just really being right next door to everything that really where the magic happens. It's pretty neat.
Let's get into these 10 things then.
So, all right, number one, what is it? So the Warner Brothers Studio Tour is a somewhat private. You have your little group, but to me it feels really private. You get a behind the scenes tour of one of the world's most famous movie studios, and the lot is actually huge. It's over 100 acres.
One of the things that caught my attention when it comes to this studio tour is how many of these buildings they have. So when you go to the studios, you think of, to me, when I thought of studios, I thought of like this big open area that they made movies in and they make sets. But it's actually a lot of these hangar type buildings.
They look like airplanes would belong in them.
Yeah, and they even took us to one where it was a movie set and it had a pool area. And if you watch the TV show of this set, you would think it's outside, but it's actually in this building.
Lighting, a lot of creativity, a lot of amazing people that build these gorgeous sets. They really feel 100% real.
Yeah, it almost makes you feel like,
they really feel real.
An Instagram photo, right? Like you see an Instagram photo and it looks really nice, but then you see it in real life and you're like, that's not it.
So number 2, you can explore iconic sets and backlots used in some of the world's most famous films and TV shows, such as Friends, which was really fun. But my favorite was where they pointed out one of the set that belonged to the Goonies.
So the Goonies scene at the end when they find the ship with the treasure on it and they're in the water, that scene was actually recorded in one of these hangar type studios, and they created the massive pool with water. And to see the studios where they did that, you think to yourself, how were they ever able to do that?
I fangirled so hard when I found out that the Goonies was filmed there. It's one of my favorite scenes with the big, huge pirate ship.
Hey, you guys.
I love that movie, and I love just finding out how exactly they created it. And to me, it's amazing that they have this big tank that they can fill with water and have accessible for something that large to fill the room. You would think, oh, well, they're using CGI nowadays. Actually, no, a lot of it is really building things that they have to create for these movie sets. And that to me is phenomenal. I love all that stuff.
And it brings us to number 3, I think, where we took a tour on the golf cart ride. They took us through the kind of the carpentry section of the lot where they make all of these. And then there was people in there painting and creating the sets and the facades, because you think they're real houses, but they're not. They're just facades.
They're facades, and they were actually, you could smell the paint. It was freshly painted. Whatever project that they were currently working on, they had a whole room of these going on. It's just, to me, incredible, and brings me back to really how much is involved to make a TV show or a movie. You often just see the actors on screen, but you don't realize how many people and how much talent it really takes behind the camera, and all the work, every detail is important for when something is on the screen.
You kind of know why now it takes so long. When you do these tours, you know why it takes so long to create a movie, because you watch the movie and you think to yourself, wow, they were working on this movie for a year or 2 years, and you're like, why does it take so long? But then you realize that just one scene could be a week's process.
Right. They show you during the tour how they film certain things. Some of it maybe we knew, but it was really cool to actually watch and actually be in the rooms of these sets and explain to us, okay, well, this is where the actor stands and this is where the camera goes. Then they have to pick up and move everything to shoot a different angle. And that can take hours upon hours. I love it, but
yeah, they also told us, like, I think it was the difference between a single camera shot and a multi-camera shot,
right.
Whereas a I don't know the difference.
You were paying attention.
I was paying attention. Like, I couldn't
really
explain
exciting.
it right now in a way that someone should listen to me.
Yeah.
But from what I gathered, one of them was like, all right, there's 2 actors there. And one of them was, you think a scene has 2 actors in it, but it's actually 1 actor at a time.
Yeah.
And then they splice them together. So sometimes you see them sitting or talking to each other, and you think, oh, they just right in front of each other.
They're having that dialogue together. Meanwhile, they're really talking to themselves, and a lot of it is...
The other actors in the trailer taking a nap.
They're eating a snack.
Yeah, it's crazy how they do that in the movies.
It brings me back to, like...
Well, it's kind of like this podcast, right? Like, you see us on the screen right here.
Hi.
I recorded mine separate.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're just talking to nobody
You're
right
upstairs taking a nap in the office. I'm recording my section now.
Awesome. I love that. All right, number 4, you can actually see sets used in the Harry Potter movies. Our kids really loved that part of it. They got to see Harry's bedroom and the setup under the stairs. I have a really great video that I shared. I can share part of this. And I really loved how immersed the kids were. And of course, I was really excited. But to see them understand what goes on for these movies and what it takes, it was really eye-opening, and I felt that they had a new sense of appreciation.
And there was one of these spots in that tour, like when you get to walk through after on your own, and they had a camera set up where it was forced perspective, kind of like what we talked about on our Unlocking the Magic podcast, how the Main Street buildings are set up. And I sat in one chair, and you sat in one chair, and it looked like you were a giant, and I was a miniature person.
That was the best. It was so much fun. I think I made you do it.
You did. I didn't want to do it, but I did it.
I mean, that's with everything, but you finally caved, and I'm so glad you did, because that was a lot of fun for me. I hope
all it was you had a chair that was closer to the camera.
Basically, that's it. But what made it was the way they had the specific camera film and the background of everything. I mean, the whole setup really made it look like it was real.
Yeah.
I looked like a giant, and I'm not going to lie, it felt kind of good for a change.
Now you know what I feel on a daily basis.
Yeah. Number 4, you can see the actual sets. Number 5, you can step into the DC universe and explore the actual sets used in Batman and Superman movies.
You know what I found the most interesting?
What?
These costumes that these actors are tiny people.
For the most part,
like even the Rock's Black Adam suit.
You size yourself up?
I was like, you know what? The Rock's not that big.
I can do that.
It looks kind of like a small suit. How'd the Rock fit in that?
You size yourself up.
I did.
You're like, I can do this.
I was like, wow, I'm bigger than Superman.
I thought that was that's towards the end of the tour, and you get to see Batman and the Superman setups, and I thought that was really interesting, and far more actually. They had more than I anticipated.
They did. They have a whole bunch. They had Batmobile. They had the Bat motorcycle that was in the Batman movies. They had DC, Black Adam, Superman, all kinds of stuff that they had that they're a part of with the DC universe that they don't do a good job of with the movies. But they did have the costumes there.
Number 6, we already talked about this, but because we talk a lot, but the tour also includes a visit to the sound stages where some of the most iconic scenes in the movie and TV history were filmed, back to the Goonies. That to me was really cool, and they shared a lot, and you could see, and this is not so there's different levels of the tour you can take and actually go into one of these sound stages. We were on a budget this day, and so we didn't. Well, I would say I don't know if you were gonna love it as much as I think you did, which made you kind of go on the lower tier.
Well, I think you have to decide what kind of experience you want. If you were really into Friends or really into, what was the other show that they were talking about a lot about?
The Big Bang Theory.
The Big Bang Theory.
Just shows.
There's another one, with the show with the girls.
Gilmore Girls?
Gilmore Girls, thank you. I wasn't a fan of any of those. So
well, I think it's more about being a fan of the process too. So for me, even though I watch maybe one out of those 3 shows, I still really love watching the process of it.
True. I enjoy that as well, and that's why I did like this tour. But if it was a show, we went on the Paramount tour, I think it was, and it showed like behind the scenes of some Seinfeld episodes or some Avenger movies. And to me, since I saw those movies, I related with that one a lot more. So if you would do like Friends or Gilmore Girls or The Big Bang Theory, going on these tours where the shows you like are actually filmed makes it much more deeper for you.
Good point, but I loved how we got to drive by all the sound stages, and on the exterior of the building, you could see what has shot there, what is currently being in production. That's super fun.
You know what else I realized?
What's up?
There's a lot of bad movies out there.
There's a lot.
Because there's a lot of movies that were on those plaques that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah, but you know what? That is a way to get to a good movie. It's kind of like with anything else. You got to try and try again until that right magic comes along. And who knows if it's going to be good unless you start. I mean, they thought, speaking of, back then too, Star Wars was considered a bad movie when the actors were even in it. They didn't think it was going to be a big deal, and look what happened. So
also true.
You never know. Okay, where am I? Number 7. You can also look at the studio's archives and get a unique look at the history of the studio. That is one thing I really appreciated. This might sound really silly and crazy, but I didn't realize that the Warner Brothers were actually brothers. Like Warner Brothers, to me, it's like Walt Disney, right? When you think of Walt Disney World, sometimes you forget that Walt Disney is actually a person.
Right. Well, he's not anymore. He was.
Well,
But he was. It was a family business. And when you see Disney World or Disneyland, you don't think, if you're not a super fan like we are, you don't correlate that with him. You just correlate it with, that's the name of the brand.
Exactly.
The coolest thing for me was to see one of the Warner Brothers phone books.
Totally.
Like a handwritten phone book of all his contacts. And he had Walt Disney's name in there, and he could call Walt Disney if he wanted to.
That is really cool. Imagine that. Imagine having that phone number back then.
I tried to call the number, but nothing happened.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Number 8, the tour includes a stop at the Warner Brothers commissary where you can enjoy a meal or a snack. It's a pretty good size area. We didn't stop to eat anything. We had plans to eat somewhere after.
Right.
But it's a really great thing that they offer at the end so that you can hang out as long as you want to. And
it had a Friends theme to it too, wasn't it? What was it? Central Perk?
That was cool.
It was cool. I like to see the couch too. If you are familiar with the Friends show, the couch, the beginning scene where they have the couch in front of the fountain, we drove right by that, and it was like a replica of the couch in front of that fountain that they shot that scene at.
So number 9, you can visit the Warner Brothers Ranch, which is the outdoor set. I think that's what you were talking about wanting to see earlier.
Yeah.
Where you could see sets of some of the studio's most famous films. I like that part of it a lot. We lucked out. We were in California during a heavy rainstorm, and we just lucked out in going to this tour when it didn't rain. Not that it rains a whole lot in California, but I don't know if I would be able to enjoy this part of the tour.
If it was raining?
If it was raining. I don't know if it continues. That'll be a good question to discover if it's rain or shine. I think it is. But I definitely loved this part of the tour where it was outside. You got to see a lot of the exterior sets and just kind of imagine yourself in the place of the actor and just picture, where the director is, where everybody is taking place and watching you perform.
2 scenes that they said were filmed there that I resonated with. Number 1 was when Spider-Man was upside down. There's a famous scene where he's kissing in the Spider-Man movie, and he's upside down. They said he was upside down for, I think it was 6 or 7 hours in that day recording that scene. And I was thinking to myself, wow, he's soaked. They had to stick cotton balls up his nose so that the water wouldn't go up his nose because he was hanging upside down and it was raining. And then the second one that I loved was they shot a Michael Jackson Pepsi commercial there, where he was recording a Pepsi commercial, Michael Jackson down the street, kind of singing and dancing, and they show you the street that was recorded on.
I really thought that was interesting, especially I liked the Spider-Man shot where they showed exactly how he was hanging, and then just thinking about, wow, the rain is actually, or the water was real.
Yeah.
And he's actually getting really soaked, and they had, limited time here with him upside down, but it seems like he
struggled through.
He really did.
It is cool to think back of, wow, Michael Jackson was on this street right here performing.
Yeah. That's what I think. That's pretty amazing, just to kind of close your eyes and pretend that you were part of that and try to reimagine what it takes to do what they do.
It's pressure too. Imagine being Michael Jackson, or you think these actors have these amazing jobs and they make tons of money, but having the pressure on you to perform with all those people watching, depending on you to do it and do your scene correctly, in not only just correctly, but do it well.
Well, there's a lot of people on the clock.
Yeah. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. One thing I love with like the Marvel movies is how they basically now make you, so one of my favorite things to do is at the end of a movie, watch the credits, because I love to see how many people it takes to create a film. It's just a weird thing that I've always loved, but I love how Marvel kind of forces
you to recognize those people because they put the end scene in.
Exactly, and I'm so grateful for that because now finally I can convince my whole family to stay with me and watch all the credits. But look at all those people the next time you think about a movie being played, of how many people are on the clock.
You know what? Marvel does a great job of that. I wonder why more movies don't do that at the end and utilize that time to put extra scenes in. Maybe it's just too much work and Marvel's just trying to get the next movie going.
Or maybe they just did it and everyone's like, darn, we can't copy
We don't want to copy them. Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes you got to do it.
Yeah.
If it's interesting.
One of my favorite scenes actually for me outside was the road from Jurassic Park, where Dr. Malcolm's Jeep is seen speeding away from the Jeep. His Jeep is speeding away from the T-Rex.
Yeah.
To me, that was really funny because everybody knows I love Jeff Goldblum. He's an awesome actor, and just trying to have him feel terrified when there's actually not really a dinosaur there and having to do it multiple times is pretty funny.
That was interesting. To me, that's fascinating to me when you can create a scene where there's a dinosaur supposedly trying to attack you, but there's not really one there.
Yeah.
And to be able to show that emotion, that's why I'm not an actor.
Well, there is a talk that Steven Spielberg actually had to film that scene 200 times before
because it was so difficult?
I don't know if it was difficult, but they edited it all together to do it. So that's incredible to me. I just love it.
It is the magic of editing, though.
That's true.
Which we don't utilize in this podcast, but most people do.
Right. Zero. I mean, a little bit, but no, we're not professionals, or we don't claim to be at all.
Not at all.
Number 10, and this is something that you talked about a little bit, but the fact that the Warner Brothers had Walt Disney in their Rolodex. But the cool thing is that a lot of people probably don't realize is a lot of other studios rent spaces at this place because they need the space. And Walt Disney and other companies rent out the studio for their own projects.
It's interesting to see how they work together because you think, and they are competing studios.
Right.
But even the Paramount studio tour that we did, there was TV shows and other companies that rented out spots. Maybe because you have a spot that is just better served for your movie and they have it and you don't.
Right.
And you can rent out that space, and maybe we should do some sort of event there. We should rent it out. I think they just said, one of the things that the lady said was there was the street that Michael Jackson was shooting his Pepsi commercial on. A big Fortune 100 corporation rented out the space and had their Christmas party there, and the CEO came flying in on a zip line in the middle of that. How cool would that be to like rent out a space and have your company party on the Warner Brothers tour?
Have a party. You have to like movies, but I think most people do. I mean, the Great Movie Ride in Walt Disney World, it was just about movies, right? That's the magic.
Movies are so great. It's like, and that's what we try to do with this podcast. And these podcasts that we do is like, it's like taking your brain away from real life and immersing you in a story and entertaining you for hours. And I think that's why these studio tours are so fun, because it brings you back to that without having to go to a movie.
Exactly. Just being immersed in the environment really makes you realize how great it can be, an escape for everybody. And I know it's not for the tour itself, might not be for everybody, but I love the energy. You can feel the history when you're walking through these areas. To me, that's part of it.
And our youngest daughter loved it. She said that was great. She loved it so much, and I didn't think she was going to. But I think because she's starting to get into those shows, she kind of recognized some of the scenes and some of the areas. And you know what? It is interesting. Not only is it fun, but it's a learning opportunity to share with your kids too, because you can see the behind the scenes of how these shows are running. You know, maybe one of your kids isn't an extrovert and doesn't love attention, but they really love movies. And you can say, you know what? There's so many other career paths or jobs you can do to be part of the movie without having to be the main actor.
Without having to be on screen.
Yeah.
There's so much, obviously, to do. And I think that I would love to give those people more credit because there's just so much talent behind the scenes.
So I highly recommend you take this tour. If you're in the Los Angeles area, I think it's in Burbank, right near the Disney Studios. Easy location to get to if you have a rental car. It's not an expensive tour. It's fun. It's only a couple hours, and you get to kind of see some behind the scenes, and it's something different to do. It's like a little bit of fun and a little bit of learning about the movies and how your favorite movies and shows are made.
Where great productions happen.
I highly recommend it.
All right.
That's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hit the subscribe button. Let us know if you've ever taken the tour. Question of the show. Have you ever taken any studio tour when you're in Los Angeles? Is it on your bucket list maybe? Drop it in the comments below. We would love to hear from you, and we will see you on the next one.